Hey guys, if you've been thinking about moving to Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas, or DFW as we like to call it, there are a few things that you may want to think about, a few reasons why you may not want to move to Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas. If you want to find out what those are, stick around and find out. Alright guys, so you're thinking about moving to Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas. You're wondering, what's the catch? Everyone's moving to Dallas, Fort Worth. What are some reasons maybe why I do not want to move there? Maybe you haven't even considered that, but there are some things to consider. There are some negatives and some cons to moving to Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas. In this video, we're going to go over just that. First and foremost is Texas weather. Most of the time in Dallas, Fort Worth, it's freaking hot. Peak summer, we're triple digits for some years, only a couple days, some years, a month, 2 months straight. Would not be unheard of. It just depends on the year, but regardless, it's hot. It's hot all the time, except for that one time we had a freaking snowstorm last February, and our power grid could not keep up with it because this is unprecedented weather for Texas. We've never experienced anything like it. Our infrastructure was not prepared for such a demand on the electrical grid. I know personally I lost power for 4.5 days completely. Didn't flicker one time, and it was extremely cold and heavy snow and ice. Another thing is our roads are not prepared for such events. We don't have snow plows. The most that we do in inclement weather like that where it's freezing is they'll run salt trucks to salt over the bridges so they don't ice over as fast or as quickly. But that's about it. We were very ill prepared for that, but that's a one-time event so far. In all my life living here, I've only experienced that one time. Aside from extraordinarily hot weather, aside from the one winter storm that we have had to that degree, next thing we're going to talk about is hail. What is hail, you might ask? If you're not from here, you may not know what that is. You may not have ever experienced it. Hail is large ice stones that fall from the sky. It sounds just as scary as it sounds. In the spring and summer, we get a lot of hailstorms. Sometimes the hail may be the size of a pea. Sometimes it may be a golf ball. Sometimes it may be a baseball. Sometimes it may even be bigger than that. If it gets that big, anything it hits, getting destroyed. Your car, your windshield, your roof. So with that being said, let's talk about roofs in Texas. It hails here all the time. So do not be surprised when we go under contract and we get an inspection report back that says roof has hail damage. Yep, if that roof is more than 6 months old, anywhere in North Texas, it has hail damage. It's a non-issue. Every roof has it. It's okay. Anything hail hits, when it gets to be about the size of a golf ball, it's going to leave a mark and it's going to do a little bit of damage to it. All right, next up on the list for Texas weather is tornadoes. Everybody always asks, what's the deal with tornadoes? They see the movies and they may see some news clippings. Yes, tornadoes are real. They do happen. No, it's not entirely like the movie Twister where everyone's running for their lives. We do have tornadoes each and every year. To what degree? It varies. Some tornadoes are very small. Some tornadoes can be larger. I've lived here all my life. I've never had a storm shelter. I have seen plenty of tornadoes. I've never personally been affected by a tornado or had any storm damage aside from some wind damage. It's very rare that a tornado impacts a largely populated area. Most of the time, tornadoes tend to develop more so in rural areas and areas that are just not well populated. It's very rare that a tornado goes through a big city. That hasn't happened in a very long time. You know, historically speaking, that has happened, but it has not happened in a long time. We get a lot of tornado warnings, tornado watches. Those can be scary if you're not used to that. But tornadoes are real. They do happen. You don't need to live in fear of tornadoes. You just need to understand and be educated and watch the weather. All right, next up on reasons why you may not want to move to Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas, or DFW is our traffic. Traffic is something that is ever present in Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas. Whether it be from road construction or rush hour. You know, and our rush hour is not really a rush hour. It's more like a rush 3 to 4 hours, morning and night. There's a couple hours midday where driving can be easy going from metro area to metro area if you do not run into construction. That's the other thing. Road construction in Dallas, Fort Worth, Texas is something that will never end. There are highways and interstates in the Metroplex that have been under construction as long as I can remember. They're still under construction today, and I do not ever see construction being complete. Reason for that, the rate of growth in Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas apparently is faster than the rate of road construction in Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas. Therefore, they do a road project because the roads are too congested. They need to expand the road. Before they finish that project, they already need to do it again because we've grown more. And so this is a vicious cycle that I have witnessed my entire life in certain areas of the Metroplex. Road construction is ongoing. I don't think it will ever end, and it can add some real delays to your travel. There are tollways, expressways. Those are roads you pay to drive on. You just drive through. There's a camera, takes a picture of your car and your license plate, and they will mail you a bill. You can get a toll tag. Here's a pro tip for you. If you are going to move to Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas, you must get a toll tag. It is free to get one. It's a sticker that gets placed on your windshield. And when those cameras for the toll roads and expressways take a picture of your car and they send you that bill, having the toll tag cuts your toll fees almost in half versus someone that does not have one. So pro tip, get a toll tag. But traffic isn't always all that bad. Just the other day, I went from downtown Fort Worth to downtown Dallas, middle of the day for some business. It only took me about 36 minutes to get from point A to point B, and that's from one side of the Metroplex to the completely opposite side. I ran into a little bit of traffic coming into downtown Dallas, but it was not that bad. And I was able to get from one side of the Metroplex to the other in way under an hour. Another reason why you may not want to move to Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas: food. Texans are very particular about what they like to eat. Especially in Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas, or DFW, big items. We got donut shops, we have Tex-Mex, and we have barbecue. If you don't like donuts, do not move to Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas. In a probably 5 square mile radius, you can find 24 donut shops. No matter what part of the Metroplex you're in. That's just what it is. We're not talking about Krispy Kremes, we're talking about independent donut shops. They're everywhere, and they're delicious, and if you do not like it, probably not the place for you. Tex-Mex. Tex-Mex is just like it sounds, a Texan version of Mexican food. Every restaurant, no matter what kind of restaurant it is, most restaurants have a section of the menu dedicated to Tex-Mex cuisine. And you may say, oh, I've had Tex-Mex. If you've not had it here, you've not had it right. And the other thing is barbecue. Texans are very proud of their barbecue. Texas barbecue is different than barbecue in any other part of the country or the world. Most of the world tries to mimic what we do in Texas with barbecue and tweak it a little bit to make it their own. Texas is the true barbecue. Brisket, huge thing in Texas. Texas barbecue is smoke, salt, and pepper. That's pretty much it. And good Texas barbecue does not require barbecue sauce. But if you're not a barbecue enthusiast, maybe it's because you haven't been to Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas yet and experienced some of the barbecue that we have here. It is top-notch, world-class barbecue. If you would like some recommendations for donuts, Tex-Mex, or barbecue in Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas, any part of the Metroplex, drop a comment below and I'd be happy to share my recommendations with you for that. Next up on the list for why you may not want to move to Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas is our landscape. If we're being honest, guys, the landscape here is pretty damn boring. It's flat, really flat. Like, it's just freaking flat. We don't have mountains. We don't even have many hills. It's really flat. If you happen to find any kind of elevation, maybe you're on an overpass, you could probably see 30 to 50 miles easy because there's nothing in your way until you cross a downtown area. Then there's some buildings in your way, but there's not ground in your way. Now, with that being said, the landscape is flat, but we do have a lot of beautiful lakes, natural vegetation, whether that be trees and woods. We don't necessarily have forests, but we do have some heavy wooded areas. And developments and developers, keep that in mind, kind of have to overcompensate for the elevations being so flat. So they tend to do a lot of things with water features and trees and bringing in vegetation. And a lot of them are starting to keep natural vegetation as they're developing land for projects to overcompensate for, again, the flat terrain. The last thing on the list for reasons why you may not want to move to Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas, or DFW is property tax. I'm sure you've read an article somewhere or read a blog post online or watched the news. Property taxes in DFW are among the highest in the country. There's no doubt about that. Our average property tax rate is 2.8% of your home's tax appraised value. Now, tax appraised value and market appraised value are two different things, so keep that in mind. Tax appraisals are typically less than market value. That's a good thing. You want it to be that way. If it's ever not that thing, you need to protest your taxes. I can help with that. for free of charge, of course. But tax rate on average 2.8%. That's pretty high, but we also have exemptions for your taxes. There's the homestead exemption in Texas. If your home is going to be your primary residence, then you can claim a homestead exemption. And what that does is it lowers the amount of your tax appraisal. So it lowers your property's value that the taxes are based off of. It also puts a cap on how quickly they can increase them year over year, because taxes will always increase. Thus, the tax rate will not necessarily increase, but your property's value will increase year over year, thus increasing your taxes year over year. So you do want to get that homestead exemption on your primary residence no matter what. Everybody qualifies for that. All you have to do is fill out a form. I'd be more than happy to assist you with that once we get you moved into your new home. Another exemption that would be worth noting that not a lot of people know about, I hear this from people that move in all the time from other states that don't have this, is tax exemption for disabled veterans. If you're a disabled veteran and you're thinking about moving to Texas, there are a lot of good reasons why you would want to do that. This is one of the biggest reasons. If you're a disabled veteran, based on your disability percentage, you get a certain exemption off of your taxes. However, if you are at 100% rated disability, you are 100% exempt from property taxes in Texas for your primary residence. So what that's saying is, if you are a 100% disabled veteran, first of all, thank you for your service to all our veterans. If you're a 100% disabled veteran in the state of Texas, for your primary residence, you pay $0 for property taxes no matter what. That only counts for your primary residence. So on a second home, investment home, vacation home, those don't qualify. It's only for your primary dwelling that you're going to live in. Another thing to keep in mind is, yes, our property taxes are a little bit high, but we don't pay state income tax. So that may offset it. You'll have to do the math for yourself to see what your taxes you're paying now. Keep in mind property tax, state income tax, whatever other taxes that you are paying right now, and do the math. If you remove state income tax completely and increase property taxes a bit, maybe that balances out for you. That's something that only you will know. Do me a quick favor. If you're finding value in this content, it would mean the world to me if you could just click the button down below to subscribe. Like this video. It really helps push this video out to other people just like you who could find this information very valuable when they're considering a move to Dallas-Fort Worth, Texas.